Ever feel like, you're running on fumes? Like even after that third cup of coffee does nothing, you're just going through the motions project after project, deadline after deadline. But you're running on empty. You're basically a car sputtering on fumes, about to stall out. And that, my friend, is the sneaky beast of burnout.
Burnout. It's everywhere. It's an epidemic. And today, we're diving deep, deep into this. We have a chapter from Office Epidemics. It's by Sue Ram. And this chapter is all about, well, they call it Burnoutitis.
Oh, Burnoutitis. I like that.
Right. It's catchy. But what I find really interesting is, a lot of these books or articles, they kind of just throw these buzzwords around, right?
Yeah, totally.
But this one, it actually lays out a structured way of thinking about burnout, understanding it, and most importantly, it actually gives you a way to, combat it.
And it does this in a really interesting way, I think, through, this fictional character, this case study of a senior manager named Raj. Raj. Okay, so Raj, this isn't like some entry-level, intern who's feeling the heat. This is a high performer.
Yeah.
Someone who's, used to pressure, thrives under pressure.
You're right.
But we find him on this particular Tuesday afternoon, and he is drowning in reports. His brain is, completely fried from weeks, maybe months of nonstop work.
Yeah.
And the source, it paints this really vivid picture of this guy who is running on fumes, like I said, barely able to string a sentence together. Priya, his colleague, approaches him about this new client proposal. And Raj, our usually sharp, witty Raj, he can barely muster the energy to even respond.
It's like his mental hard drive is just stuck on that spinning wheel.
Yes.
The one.
Oh, buffering.
Buffering. Have you felt that way?
Oh, 100%. I think we all have at some point, right?
Especially these days. And it's something we're seeing a lot more, especially I think with those high performers like our friend Raj, because there's this pressure, you always have to be on.
Always on. Always available.
Exactly, the always on work culture.
Yeah.
And then, you combine that with the expectation to do more with less. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, a recipe for burnout. But here's the thing that really struck me in this chapter. It's not just a you problem. Burnout, it's not just contained to the individual, right?
Right.
It has this ripple effect. It impacts teams, relationships, even entire organizations.
That is such a good point. And the source really drives that home when we start to see how Raj's burnout starts to impact his team.
Oh, totally.
So Priya, for example, she starts to question her own judgment. Did I overestimate, his bandwidth? And then Ravi, who's already swamped, he starts to get increasingly frustrated because, well, all of this extra work is landing on his plate.
Yeah.
And then there's Ananya, bright-eyed intern, probably witnessing this whole thing unfold. And I'm thinking, girl, run. Get out while you still can.
Yeah, right. Is this what my future holds?
Exactly. It's like this dark cloud has just settled over the entire team.
It's true. It's like this contagious disease almost. And you think about the psychology behind all of this, right? You've got Priya, and she's feeling powerless.
Right.
You've got Ravi, he's overloaded.
Of course.
And then Ananya, poor Ananya, she's just straight up disillusioned.
Yeah.
Which, I think are all perfectly natural human reactions when you're working with somebody who's going through it.
Right.
And the source makes this really powerful comparison. It says that, unchecked burnout, it's like this contagious disease that's silently spreading through the office.
Wow.
And the symptoms, while they can be pretty detrimental to everyone around them, not pretty, actually. They can be extremely detrimental.
So we're talking about burnout, right? And it's not just a bad day. It's not even just a bad week. It's like this, like you said, it's an epidemic, this full-blown office epidemic.
Totally. And it can be really sneaky too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because how do you know? How do you know if you're just having one of those weeks, or if you're actually about to have a meltdown? Where's that line? How bad is too bad?
It's such a good question.
Yeah.
And this is where this source, I think, gets really interesting because it gives you this self-assessment tool.
Yes. And I love that they include this because it's not about diagnosing yourself, right? It's more about just building self-awareness.
Okay. Yeah. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
So what's the SparkNotes version? What kind of questions are we talking about here?
So the questions are super relatable. Do you find yourself getting irritated by things that normally wouldn't bother you? Or like, are you feeling emotionally drained even after you've had like a good night's sleep?
Okay, those are hitting a little too close to home.
Right.
But seriously, I think those are things that we've all felt at some point.
Absolutely. We all have. But what I found really interesting and honestly useful is how they then take your score, right? And they put it into these categories.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us. What categories?
So they have these categories of behavior. So they have perception, they have problem, and then they have pain.
Okay, perception, problem, pain. Got it.
So let's say you score kind of in that lower range, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're like full blown, you've got the burnout, but you're aware of some fatigue, right? You're probably a little more stressed than usual. So that's that perception stage. You're basically like the smoke detector, right? You're picking up on those early warning signs.
Got it. So those early warning signs like snapping at your coworker, maybe feeling less motivated.
Exactly. And then, let's say you score a little higher. You're in that middle range. That's when we're talking about like it's a problem. Like burnout is happening maybe a little more frequently, right? Could be triggered by certain things. Like maybe you've got this massive project deadline looming, or maybe you're just juggling way too many responsibilities.
So it's not constant, but it's definitely something to pay attention to.
Exactly. It's like the check engine light.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, something's up. We need to take a look at this before it becomes a bigger issue. And then, we've got that pain category, and that's when, things are bad.
Yeah.
This is chronic burnout, and it's impacting, your work obviously, but also your health, your relationships, the whole 9 yards. This isn't a flickering light anymore. This is like a 5-alarm fire.
And I imagine that's when people finally admit that they need help, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, often that is the case. But this is where, again, this source shines because it gives you not just one, but 2 practical frameworks that you can use to, like, actually address this.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? What framework?
So they have something called refuel, and then they have something called restore. And what I love about both of these is that they're actionable.
Okay.
These aren't like vague self-help platitudes, These are like concrete steps, things that you can actually do, like, today to start feeling better.
All right. I am sold. Let's dive in. So refuel. Tell me all about it. What's that all about?
So refuel, that one's really good for like those everyday burnout symptoms.
Okay.
And they made it super easy to remember. It's an acronym.
Love an acronym.
Right. So R recognize.
R recognize.
And that's the first step, right? You have to actually admit to yourself, I am feeling burned out. Don't try to brush it off. Don't try to power through.
Or the classic, I'm fine, everything's fine, when nothing could be further from the truth.
And that's, I think, maybe the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because once you've done that, once you've recognized it, then you can move on to E, evaluate what?
Evaluate your priorities. Like, are you spread too thin? Are you saying yes to things that maybe you should be saying no to?
That E is huge.
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to get like caught up in the busyness of it all and forget to actually prioritize what really matters.
100%. And that leads us to F, which is find support.
Okay.
And this is like, don't be afraid to reach out, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to go through this alone.
Yeah.
Talk to a trusted friend, a mentor, a therapist, whoever it might be. Just reach out to your support network.
And sometimes that support comes from unexpected places too.
Totally.
Like a coworker, someone who's maybe been there. Sharing those experiences, it could be so powerful.
Yeah, totally. Okay, yay. So what's a big one? Unplug and rest.
Okay, unplug and rest.
Okay, unplug and rest.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about like, a weekend trip.
Right.
Although those are nice too, but like building in those regular breaks into your day, right? Like setting boundaries between work and your personal life.
Boundaries. It's like the magic word these days, isn't it?
It really is. But I think for a lot of us, it's also one of the hardest things to do.
Oh, 100%.
Which is why having a framework like this is so helpful.
Yeah.
Because it reminds you to do those things.
Okay. And E.
E, establish healthy habits.
Okay.
And this is like the basics, right?
Right.
Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating nutritious foods? Are you moving your body? It's funny how often we forget about those things, though. Like, especially when we're feeling burned out, it's like, those are the first things to go.
It's true, yeah. We think we can just, like, run on fumes and caffeine.
Yeah.
But our bodies and our minds need, like, actual fuel to function properly.
Right.
And then that brings us to the last L, which is look after yourself, which is like kind of the overarching theme of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It's that reminder that, you know what, taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's essential.
100%. And it's a great segue, actually, into the other framework that you talked about, right?
Yes.
Restore,
Yes.
which that one's a little more, I don't know, intense, a little more in-depth.
Yeah, it's a little more comprehensive.
Yeah.
So that one is really for like that chronic, deep-rooted burnout.
Okay.
It's less about like those quick fixes, and it's more about like those long-term prevention and well-being.
So if refuel's like the first aid kit, restore is like building your immune system, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And just like with refuel, each letter represents a step.
Okay. So walk us through it. R is for.
Recognize. So again, it starts with that awareness. Pay attention to those early warning signs, like those whispers of burnout before they become like full-blown screams.
And we often just like ignore those little whispers thinking we can muscle through.
Exactly. But that's what gets us into trouble in the first place. So you've recognized the signs, you've acknowledged it. Now it's time to evaluate. But with this one, it's not just about like your to-do list. It's about your workload as a whole.
Okay. So like taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, seeing like, am I actually taking on too much? Are there things that I can delegate?
Exactly. And then S, set clear boundaries.
Oh, there's those boundaries again.
Boundaries.
They're so important.
They're crucial.
But they also don't just magically appear.
Right. No, they don't.
We have to make them happen.
We have to. We have to consciously create them and maintain them. And that's where, the T comes in. Take regular breaks.
Okay, breaks.
And I don't mean like, scrolling through social media on your lunch break. I mean like truly disconnecting.
Yes.
Giving your mind a chance to rest and recharge.
So like actually going for a walk, maybe doing a little meditation, reading a book, like anything that helps you switch off from work mode.
Exactly, exactly. And then, open up to others. And again, this is where that support network comes in. Talk to, your manager, your colleagues, your loved ones. Let them know what's going on.
Because often just saying it out loud can
Yes.
lighten the load a bit, right?
Totally.
Give you that perspective.
100%. And speaking of perspective, that leads us to R, reassess your goals.
Okay, reassess your goals.
Like, are you chasing after the right things? Like, do your goals actually align with your values? Because taking the time to reassess, it can really help you regain that sense of purpose and direction.
And prevent you from burning out on something that doesn't even really matter to you.
Exactly. And then finally, we have E, embrace self-care. And this one's all about prioritizing your well-being.
Because self-care, it's not a luxury. It's like a necessity.
It really is. It's about filling your own cup so that you can show up, as the best version of yourself, both at work and in life.
This restore framework is like a blueprint for building a more sustainable, a more fulfilling, work life.
Totally. It really is about making those fundamental changes that are really going to support you in the long run.
I love these frameworks, refuel and restore. It's like you said, they give you those steps, those concrete steps that you can take, that roadmap. But let's be real, sometimes we need that little kick in the pants, right? That wake-up call. What happens if we just ignore all those warning signs? Like what's the real cost of just like letting burnout run wild?
Well, the source actually calls it the career kill shot. Yeah, burnout. Like imagine you're this high performer, you're crushing your goals, you're exceeding expectations. You're like, yeah, I got this.
Because you've always pushed through.
Yeah.
You've dealt with the deadlines, the all-nighters, the pressure, like you've handled it before.
Exactly. And then burnout's like, hold my beer.
Right.
It doesn't care about your track record. It'll sneak up on you. It'll drain your energy, your creativity, your drive. The source actually compares it to like watching the star athlete just slowly lose their edge.
Well, that's a good analogy.
Right, like missed deadlines start piling up, missed opportunities, your reputation takes a hit, and it's honestly kind of heartbreaking.
And it's not just heartbreaking for the individual, right? It's what happens when this starts to impact the entire organization.
Oh, 100%. Because think about it, right?
Right.
One person's burnout, it can easily become another person's burnout.
Right.
And
Yeah.
suddenly the team morale just plummets, productivity just tanks. And before you know it, you've got this domino effect.
It's contagious.
It's totally contagious.
It's like that old saying, one bad apple spoils the bunch. But in this case, it's one burned out employee. And It can impact the entire company.
Exactly. And the cost of that, I mean, lost productivity, obviously. Innovation goes down, just wasted potential. And nobody wants that.
So we've talked about how to recognize it. We understand the impact. We have these frameworks. But for those listening right now who are like, okay, I'm feeling this, what can they do? Like, what's step one?
Well, the good news is the source actually gives you a step-by-step. They call it the cure, right?
We like it.
It's very bold. And it starts with that first step, that simple but oh so challenging first step, which is admitting there's a problem.
Yeah, denial. It's a powerful drive.
It really is. But once you do that, once you've acknowledged it, you can actually start taking action, right? And that might mean having an honest conversation with your manager. It might mean looking at your workload and being like, okay, what can I delegate?
Yeah.
Or just, asking for help.
Yeah, like recognizing that you don't have to do this all alone.
Exactly. And then it gets to that thing that I think a lot of, especially high achievers, struggle with, which is scheduling rest.
Ooh, yeah.
And I don't mean like planning that one vacation a year. I mean like building in those regular breaks into your day-to-day.
Setting those boundaries.
Setting those boundaries because they're not selfish.
No.
They're essential.
Self-preservation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And honestly, something as simple as like getting up and going for a 15-minute walk in the middle of the day, it can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing that I think sometimes gets overlooked is like simplifying your goals. We live in this culture that's all about like, go, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. But are you actually focused on the things that really matter?
Right. You get so caught up in that, just that need to do it all.
Totally. And by simplifying, by learning to say no, you can create that space for what actually matters, both at work, but also in your personal life.
It's about being intentional. Right. Making those choices. Not just adding more to your plate because you feel like you should be doing more.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to that final step, which is all about creating those sustainable work routines, building in those breaks that we talked about, setting realistic deadlines, prioritizing those healthy habits. It's about finding that rhythm that works for you, that allows you to thrive and not just survive.
Absolutely. It's finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Where you can still be ambitious, you can still be driven, and you can still be successful. But you don't have to sacrifice your health and happiness to get there.
100%.
And, the big takeaway here is that burnout, it's not a badge of honor.
No, it's not.
It's not something to be proud of. It's a sign.
Yeah.
It's a sign that something needs to change. But the good news is we have the power to make those changes, right?
Absolutely.
By understanding the signs, by taking those preventative measures, by using these frameworks, we can navigate this whole crazy work world without becoming another casualty of burnout culture.
Yeah.
And you know what? As I was thinking about this, I was like, these principles, they apply to so much more than just work.
Oh, totally.
Like parental burnout is a real thing.
Yeah.
Relationship burnout.
Yeah.
Just the exhaustion of living in this constantly connected world. I mean, these frameworks, they're valuable strategies for just reclaiming your energy no matter what area of your life needs a little refuel, a little restore.
Well said.
So there you have it. Another deep dive, complete. We talked about burnout, what it is, how it impacts us, and most importantly, what you can do about it. Remember, taking care of yourself, it's not selfish. In fact, it's the smartest investment you can make. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay well.